First of all, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. For those that just logged on, Trent just got back from a really cool hunting trip in Alaska with his daughter and a buddy and a kid. And you think you told me this morning you got home at 4 a.m. and then
Yeah.
kind of hit the ground running, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, we certainly appreciate you taking the time, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you so far. Before we do the show and stuff. So first of all, I guess what I'd like to do is welcome you to Spike Camp. Spike Camp's a fairly new initiative platform that Blake and I started back in April. Concept being, a safe place for hunters to share resources, promote conservation, and just be hunters hanging out, having a good time. That's what it's all about. So we've started this series, a couple different series on different species. This one is Elk Camp, completely focused on elk hunting. And what we've done, you're the third and final sort of grand finale for us for our elk hunting series. And so we want to start off with an introduction, I guess, on your part. I think it's safe to say if you've watched elk hunting on YouTube, then you probably are familiar with Born and Raised Outdoors. And if you're familiar with Born and Raised Outdoors, you're very familiar with Trent Fisher because he's one of the main characters and super fun guy to watch. So maybe if you could just give us a little background, about yourself and how you got into hunting. We'll start with that. And in particular, how'd you get into elk hunting? So if you maybe give us a little background on that, Trent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it, buddy. No, it's a pleasure to be here for one, guys. I really, really appreciate the invite. Sometimes I think we take for granted all the experiences that we've had in life, and in the woods and everything. And it's so much fun now to kind of relive a lot of that stuff. But we started in 2007. We started just a brief background of, we always had watched like Primos and the elk hunting stuff. And we have here, as you guys do, that you were talking to me about earlier, we have Roosevelts here. That's what we have in our backyard. And nobody had really successfully filmed Roosevelts. Larry D. Jones was doing a little bit of stuff with them. And Will Primos did a little tiny bit with Roosevelts. So we thought, well, man, this is our niche. Let's try to, it's in our backyard. Let's try to see what we can do here. So with my brother taking out a school loan and buying a camera, we bought a video camera and a Canon GL2. Like now they're dinosaur obsolete. I think they're in museums now. But we bought a camera and we went about it. And that first year, it was just to try to document our hunts. And we all had full-time jobs. And so it was always every night and every weekend, all season long, from the first to the end of the weekend to the end of the season, we would hunt and film some great footage. But we realized the difficulties and how hard it was. And we did make a DVD. It was unbelievable. We called it Tagged Out because it was the last 3 days and we killed 4 bulls in 3 days. It was unreal. Wow. We never killed a bull before that. So that was kind of our jump start. And so then we started in the DVD mode and said, that's where it's at, right? DVD.
That's where that was the big ticket back then, right?
Yeah, we were just out of the VHS, so anyway, yeah. So we did the DVD thing for quite a few years. And our goal then was to make enough money so we'd take these DVDs to sports shows like the Roseburg Sports Show or all the sports shows around. And then we would peddle the DVDs and then also sell them in archery shops as well. And our goal was to pay for our hunts in September, Mm-hmm. And it started becoming pretty successful, and we started getting better and better at making these things and producing them, and at hunting as well. I mean, that was the big thing. We learned a lot along the way. And so anyway, to fast forward to the digital space and to YouTube, man, if we did have a guy on our first DVD, I will say this real quick. On our very first DVD, we had a guy tell us, man, you guys should look into putting this on YouTube. And we're like, no.
What's YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a thing. I mean, there was just cat videos and stuff like that back then, but if we would have got in on that ground floor, it would have been unbelievable. we obviously didn't take his advice, and it wasn't until years later that we finally, Hushin actually, good friends of ours, they went into the space of YouTube, and because television, we did a stint with television. We did 2 years with the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel, and it was just so much. There's so much you couldn't do. You couldn't show blood on the animal's face. You couldn't. So you had to go in before you got to recover the animal. You had to doctor it all up, and then you had to go back. Yeah. Then you had to go back and act like, oh, look we found it. And it was so fake for us. And that's, if you watch stuff, we don't fake anything. It's, even if it's bad, as far as like it's if we're balling, if we're whatever it may be, we show it the real thing. So yeah. And anyway, so we just went straight to YouTube after that, and it just, we started with this. We had this plan, this big goal of doing this thing called Land of the Free, and that was going to be a day-by-day elk hunt to show every single day. And so I did the stint of it, as far as Cody did as well, but I did it from start to finish, and it was 53 days straight, and it was 5 different states, and it was 10 days in each state, and elk hunting with a bow and calling elk. And it was pretty amazing what that did. We ended up shooting 13 bulls that year, and we got back from that, and we were going to do a video starting. So we had a week and a half off after we got back from that, in October 15th, somewhere around there. And then we jumped directly straight into editing, and we did a video every day all the way through Christmas. And so that kind of catapulted us. It just, from there, it just kind of exploded, honestly, like out of our control. We couldn't, it was just like, it just elevated the whole program and everything. And so unbelievable. And I wish I would have started our call company back then as well. You see all these things afterwards,
Yeah, exactly.
And so anyway, and then now we've started a call company. We've done a number of, I think we have 5 Land of the Frees. We don't do the day by day anymore. It's weird how people get accustomed to things, and then there's trends that kind of fall out. And so now we're going back to the more well-produced, well-polished videos, hunting videos, and going from there. So that's just a brief background. We've done a lot of elk hunting in our past. We've done a lot of it, and it's our passion for sure.
Oh yeah, you referenced the Land of the Free stuff, and I think that I was familiar with you guys before that, and not a big TV guy, so don't even really watch cable at all anymore. But I remember that original series of Land of the Free, and man, it was addicting. Like we were waiting. I was waiting every day. My wife got totally tired of hearing that that startup music, the song or whatever, the launch song. Yeah. So like she knew exactly what the next hour and a half was going to be about, right? So it was great, and I think that's it's a different twist. You see some of the other YouTube channels that are dedicated to hunting and elk hunting, and I think a lot of them have tried to possibly model after what you guys did, keeping it as raw and as uncut and as real. And I think the one thing that I personally like a lot about the whole Born and Raised program is how much fun you guys have. I mean, you guys just crack it up. I mean, that's what hunting should be about, is just get out there, get after it, have a good time, and bug your buddies, tease them back and forth. I mean, that's really what you guys are all about. I mean, it's a comedy show with hunting in it half the time, and that's what we love, right? It's really cool.
And I think these things are kind of cool because you can hear the behind the scenes side of things, as people might be interested in that video or that music that you said. It was artist called Anime is what it was. The song was anyway, that the first of that, we got her permission to use all that music and everything, and to show that on YouTube, got her signature, got all that. She pulled that from us after we launched the whole thing. And so we don't make a dime off of, I don't know how many millions. It's got tens of, I don't know, maybe, I don't know how many millions of views now on that. Sure. And we never made a dime off of it.
Well, that's how it goes sometimes. Those are the things you learn along the way, right?
Correct. Yeah. Just interesting, kind of things. So.
It's an awesome story. Yeah. Awesome story. And then I know, I don't know the timeline, but I know that you guys at some point, everybody said, "Hey, we're going all in," and you quit your jobs and just went full force, right? Like
We did,
that's
yeah.
that in itself, big commitment.
It's huge, man. And I think anything in life, like you got to take the risk to get the reward, and it makes it that much more rewarding in the end. And so we had a plan. We went to ATA, Archery Trade Association, and we had this plan to pitch to all these sponsors. And so we had a whole deck, all media deck, all built up with these numbers that we thought we were going to hopefully hit, you know. And so when we pitched all these sponsors, and it was unbelievable. I'll tell you, just because of the people that we pitched, every single one of them said yes, for one, and that's how we started. Not one person, not one group that we went to said no, and which was very humbling. And and that's how. And then that next, that next little segment was us, quitting our jobs and going in full time, and just, I mean, just hoping,
Yeah. Well done. Congratulations. It's a great story. And you guys have done, you've done, I think Blake said to me when we were launching Spike Camp, he's got a background in the digital media space. And he made a comment to me, which is pretty profound for a 26 or 7-year-old kid to say. He said, it's very difficult to start a community, especially in the online world. And this would apply to YouTube. Like, it's very difficult to start. It takes a lot of work, but boy, is it ever easy to destroy it. One mistake
100%.
and it's game over, right? So, congrats to you guys for making sure you make good decisions along the way. And we're hoping to do the same with our little project here. So anyway, let's dig into the fun stuff, the elk hunting. And I guess I got a whole stack of questions, and if we get questions from the audience here, we'll definitely get Blake to slide them in. My first question, we're going to loop back to Roosevelt hunting in a couple minutes here, but when did you guys start? When did the progression happen from hunting in Oregon to starting to hunt other states? Was that something you did before the whole video thing?
No, we didn't. So we started that in 2012, I think. So after we gained enough money from the DVD sales, it was like, we have enough money to go out of state. And at that time, which I wish it was now, you could get Wyoming over the counter. You could pretty much draw it every year, and a general Wyoming tag. And so we went to Wyoming, and we killed 5 bulls in 7 days in Wyoming. And that was really profound. It was just amazing. I think people get pigeonholed in their own backyard and what they feel comfortable with. And I think I know we did, because if the elk, especially Roosevelt elk, and I know you're going to get to that, but especially Roosevelt elk, they're fairly small ranges, right? So, I mean, if they're not here, they're probably going to be over here. Or if they're not there, let's go bugle down there, see if we can get an answer. All right, remember the last time they were over? You know what I mean? But when we went to Wyoming, it was just no stone unturned, hike until 10, 13 miles a day and see where you can get shaken up. And it was an adventure like we'd never had before.
Yeah. And then you got the element of grizzly bears and everything else in Wyoming, which you don't have. You don't get that on the Oregon coast, I don't think.
Not too many. No.
Not too many.
No.
Well, that's awesome. So do you guys use any of the tag services like Go Hunt or any of those guys to help with your draws?
I use Hunt and Fool now. That's who I use. Yeah, that's who I use. I'm good friends with Garth and those guys over at Hunt and Fool, and I didn't until just last year. So we'd always just been like, and we're terrible. I'll just be honest with everybody. It's like, oh my gosh, last day, guys, did you guys have any idea Montana's, and we're like, oh shoot, everybody jump on there. We're not very great at it. So I thought, well, this would be good. And so now, the hard part was like remembering all my passwords, all that stuff to give to those guys. But no, it's they do a great job, and I don't have to worry about it now. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I know a few guys up here in BC because for the most part, most of the U.S. states allow they consider out of country as as non-residents. So in a lot of states, Canadians can apply and come down and hunt, and I know a few guys that do it, and some use the tag services and some don't, and they just play the points game and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll talk about our situation up here when I get down to it, but we have a completely different program in BC on how our draws are done. So out of all those states that you've hunted, is there a favorite? I mean, obviously Oregon is home, but is there one? You
Yeah,
mentioned Wyoming.
Yeah, it wouldn't be my favorite. As far as just, I like adventure. I like beauty. Wyoming's hard to beat, and the people that I
Mhm.
always meet in Wyoming are very hard to beat. They're just. I shot a bull one time in Colorado, and then we were making our way to Wyoming to hunt that as well. And so I corded it all up. I even packaged it and everything, and then I brought it to a bar, just an old bar, and I said, "Hey, you guys have a cooler in here? Is there any way I can keep my meat in here?" And the guy, he's like, "Well, how is the animal? Did you gut it?" And I'm like, "No, it's in packages." He thought he was going to let me hang it in his cooler, just a gutted, hanging, raw elk, and
Nice.
and I hung it. I put that in this cooler for 10 days. I went there and I said, "Hey, man, I really appreciate it." Offered him $100, $200, whatever. He's like, "I don't want your money. No, I don't. I'm just glad
Wow,
you guys had a good
that's
hunt."
awesome.
We got fortunate and had some better and some more luck in Wyoming, but it's just the people that I meet there have just been so amazing. And Montana, it's a beautiful place too. So there's some wild there. It's called Big Sky Country for a reason. It's got some huge,
Sure.
vast, beautiful places, but just Alaska, that was gorgeous. We were out on the edge of the Brooks Range. I've never been there before. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of places to the left to explore, definitely, but Wyoming has always held a place in my heart for one of the best.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. And you mentioned this year you're doing a big swing, right? You're doing New Mexico and
Yeah,
maybe Colorado, Utah. So
yeah.
those are beautiful too. I personally have hunted a little bit. I did a elk hunt a few years ago in New Mexico, and it's phenomenal country too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of private land, but there's also a lot of state land as well. But yeah, it's great country. So that's
It's hard to
awesome.
beat Colorado too. I mean, just for
Hmm.
just just the giant mountains. I mean, they have so many peaks over 10,000 feet. It's crazy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the opportunity for out-of-state people that might be listening to this right now, Colorado is. I would look into it. It gets pressured hard. It does, but at the same time, there's places you can get away and actually have a really good hunt.
Yeah. If you want to put some boots on the ground, I'm sure you can
Yeah.
you can get deep there. Yeah, so British Columbia, it's an interesting province if you're an elk hunter. So I don't know what you may or may not know, but we've got two species, right? We got Rockies and we've got Roosevelt. The Our population of elk, I guess I should have pulled the numbers. Blake, you might know them off the top of your head, but our Rocky Mountain population, it's not huge. And over the past 10, 15 years, it's been suffering and kind of in certain areas, I should say, it's coming down. I'm not a biologist. I don't have the stats, but predators, industry, um, just different environmental conditions, all of those things have played into our populations getting a little more sparse than we would like. British Columbia is also an incredibly vast, huge province. It's massive. So our elk are kind of scattered around different regions. So if you go into the southeast corner bordering Washington State, all the way along there, that's the Kootenays, West and East Kootenays is a good area. That's a very popular area for elk hunting. It's also um, very rugged, big mountains, lots of canyons and gorges, like really tough country. And for the most part, elk hunting in BC is over the counter. So you can just buy a
Oh, really?
tag. We can hunt in the rut with rifles. So we have archery season starts. For the most part, I think it's September 1st. In a lot of places, it starts. I think up north, and start a little earlier. So there's a lot of opportunities for hunters to hunt elk with a bow and with a rifle in the rut, and then the season goes until sort of early mid-October in most places. But the caveat to that is in the southern half of the province and in some of the areas, the bulls are 6 point only. So
Oh,
we have a
really?
six
Okay.
point restriction. Yeah, so it makes it tough. And then you get a little farther north and a little more remote. That changes a little. You can shoot 3 point or better, In some cases, you can shoot cows as well. Just depends. But for the most part, our Rockies are all, well, for the most part, they are over the counter, but we do have some special draws in certain areas. Not much, but a handful. But then when it comes to Roosevelt hunting, our Roosevelt population is, from what I understand, is doing quite well. And they're coastal based. So if you take a look at the geography of BC, we have Vancouver Island. And Vancouver Island has a lot of Roosevelt elk. They were transplanted there, 50, 60 years ago. They've done really well. That entire area, and then parts of coastal mainland BC, South Coast BC, we have Roosevelt as well, but that is 100% limited entry draw. And the system in BC is 100% random on the draw. There is no points. There's no, you can't buy points. You can't do anything. It's just a lottery, pure lottery. And when it comes to Roosevelt, the odds, more often than not, the odds are not very good to pull a tag. And because it's random, you might pull one tag in your lifetime if you're, considered a lucky draw hunter. But some guys will get 2 or 3. But for the most part, like I've been applying for 25 years, never got a tag. And so, yeah, so, I thought it would be interesting to kind of pick your brain on tactics for Roosevelt hunting, because honestly, if you talk to elk hunters in BC, the majority of those elk hunters know how to hunt Rockies, because that's what we hunt, is Rocky Mountain elk. Sure. But, the minority know how to really hunt Rosies, if there's any difference. And this is what I kind of wanted to unpack with you a little bit, given that you've got so much experience hunting, both species. So I guess my first question is, what do you consider key differences between Roosevelt hunting? Because I would think the territory that we're hunting, Roosevelt elk, is going to be similar in terrain and terrain features as what you guys are hunting on the coast in Oregon. It'd be pretty close anyway. Same kind of foliage and trees and that kind of thing. So again, what do you think the big differences are there?
Yeah. So, so we approach it pretty much the same way. Honestly, like I get asked this question all the time, and my answer to it is I would so much rather try to call a Roosevelt bull than a Rocky bull any day of the week. And people get surprised by that, I think, a lot of the times, just because Rockies tend to bugle more. I mean, you're going to hear them bugle and bugle and bugle a lot of times. And a lot of times that's just, that's just a bull saying, hey, I'm over here. Where are you? You're over there. Okay, everything's cool. Roosevelt's a little different usually, in my opinion, in my the circumstance that I've had, as far as like they're very territorial. They're very, when you get a mature, or not even too mature, when you get a herd bull, when you get a Roosevelt that's, that thinks he's king of the walk, he's definitely callable. He's definitely susceptible to calls because they live in such confined areas. And like you said, with the terrain and the topography, not to mention like the, I guess you could call it a rainforest kind of a look, as far as like how thick it is around here. There's been lots of times, you can't shoot 10 yards, let alone 5 yards. So it's super thick. So these animals they don't have the ability to see other animals from long distance to tell what things are. So they either have to decide, I'm going to come in and I'm going to see it for myself, and that's going to get your shot for you, or I'm going to sit back here and do the things that bulls do and hang up and just wait for you to show yourself. And so that's where the calling, I think, comes in a lot, to where it's just like you can really push the buttons of a bull, and that's the fun of it, right? Where it's like, this didn't work, but let's keep edging on this. He really gets wound up when I start to rake this tree or whatever it may be. So that's where it's like the Roosevelt side of things, man. I love it when you can get a Roosevelt to bugle. They don't bugle as much as Rockies, though. Some do, but generally they don't. But when you can get a Roosevelt to just start cracking off on his own, I'll bet your kill rate goes up to about a 50%.
So once they're committed, they're really committed. Once that calling is engaged, then once the hook is set, you're in good shape then.
In our experiences, and so what we'll do when we get a bull to bugle, when we get him to sound off and give away his location, right off the bat, first thing we'll do is we'll all look at each other and we'll all stop and we'll turn different directions. We'll wait quite a few minutes, because usually Roosevelts don't just pipe off and pipe off. Usually they will, and then it takes a little bit and they'll build it up again, and then they'll pipe off again. So, and then we'll wait, and then we'll get him to bugle again. And we want to pinpoint that location. Number one, I want to within 50 yards of where that bull is right now. And that does a couple different things. That tells us right off the bat, okay, he's just on that south face, but he's got a little bench there. So, okay, he's probably got cows. They're probably bedded right there. Or is that bull moving down? Is he pushing his cows down to water? What is he doing at that moment in time? What time of day is it? And then the other big thing is, where's the wind at, right? So it's like, okay, where he's at, the wind right now where I'm at is doing this, but it could be totally different over on that side of the ridge or draw or whatever. So just really like taking the equation down and breaking down each tiny little point of the chapters of the whole story is what helps us be successful. And like, how are we going to come into that bull? I always want to come into a bull on his level. I don't want to come in from above him. I don't want to come in from below him. I always want to actually have a level of that I can get on he's already on. So he feels comfortable. He's not looking down at you and expecting to see something or scared to walk up a hill towards you. So all those little things take play when you're calling Roosevelts, any bull for that matter, but especially like Roosevelts that are just super, they're turned on all the time, it seems like. The other cool thing about Roosevelts is like a Rocky Mountain bull, say they wind you, say the herd wins you or whatever, the lead cow wins you, you're going to see dust for sometimes the next half mile over the next ridge. Whereas a Roosevelt, they're going to pick up, they're going to move about 300 yards, and then they're going to kind of start sneaking, milling around, trying to take a little bit of inventory. What just happened? All right, how far do we go for safety? And you can, a lot of times, because of the topography and because of how thick it is around here, you can hear them go that distance, and then you'll hear them stop. And so you could make another play on those animals if you have the right terrain to do that. So there's a lot of cool things about Roosevelts that I think a lot of people, it's intimidating at times. But I've always said, like, finding the darn things is the hardest part of Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to kind of pick your brain about that too. So, like, I'm sure this is also similar to your country. So, in Vancouver Island, there's a lot of logging. There's a lot of old growth forest. There's a lot of reprod. And I've talked to a few Roosevelt hunters, and the big strategy for the most part, even with the outfitters that kill big bulls over there, is they drive around at first light and they try to find them, visually in log blocks first, even on the pre-scouting. And like you said, if they know they're in that log block on Monday, chances are Thursday, Friday, they're probably not far from that log block. So my question would be, one of the many questions would be, if you're trying to e-scout an area, I mean, you obviously got your backyard, you got your honey holes and all that stuff, but if you're e-scouting and trying to just find a good location for Roosevelts, what are you looking for? Because I know with Rockies, at least in BC, what we look for a lot of times is a water source to start with and some feed. I mean, in the case of a Rosie, what do you guys look for?
And that's where it's difficult. That's why I said finding them is the hardest part, because it sounds like we have the same kind of terrain, logging roads all over, reprod, every edge of timber up to old growth, all that. And so, and that's why I say finding them is the most difficult part, because we are looking in clear cuts, that's what we're looking in at times. But if I'm hunting something that I really, it seems like those better bulls are in stuff that does not have an opening. They're in the thick bottoms and stuff. And here, like you said, for Rockies, you're looking for water source. We've got water every 30 yards. So it's like, yeah, the water source, they've always usually got water around here. So, and then, and every night the fog comes in. So that's why we have so many trees, probably the same, I'm assuming you guys too. And so it waters the trees every single day. But so there's lots of water and food is abound. There's a lot of food. It's just getting these spots. So I hunt a couple different areas, and it's probably about a 2 square mile piece. And they've got lots of drainages and creek bottoms and stuff. And a lot of times getting to the bottoms is terrible. I mean, it's just so thick. But elk, especially in September, they will they want to see their cows. They want to be able to actually see what's going on. So they will live in a little more open bottoms, maybe bed and just a little more open reprod, stuff like that. Just because they do like to, that's their harem thing. They want to tend their cows. They want to be able to see what's going on with their whole family there. So it's one of those things where it's still finding them is difficult. I'm always looking for open. So I'll get on Onyx and I'll look for these bottoms that don't just knife draw. I'm looking for these bottoms that have some flats in the bottoms. That's anywhere from 20 to 60 yards at times wide. And I know those elk will feed down in those bottoms. And so that's what I'm kind of keying in. Big benches. That's another big one. These elk, they always come up and they usually they're going to bed in pretty good stuff. They're not going to be, on super steep terrain where they want to take a nap. And so what we'll do is we'll look in the bottoms at first, and then we'll check the clear cuts and stuff like that. And then if we see elk in them, unless there's like a good vantage to where we can sneak around a cat road or something and try to shoot something, or the bull's just going crazy nuts or something on his own, which doesn't happen a lot. We're going to wait. We're going to wait on those elk till they get out of those clear cuts, until they get in those safe places where we can make a move on them and to where we can pinpoint where we think they're going to go.
So do you, like typically with Rockies in the rugged country in BC, we see them, feeding in log blocks or whatever, feeding area. And then at first light, they'll start working their way up high. They always go up more often than not. They go up and they bed, in the darkest, crappiest section of timber as possible. So, for us hunting them, we have, you got to try to get them when they're in motion or at first light, try to pin them down. With Rockies, then I guess with Rosies in your area, they're gonna be feeding at night and into first light, and then they're gonna be in that same motion program to bed. But their bedding area is not as far away, basically, is what you're saying. They'll have a nice flat bench.
Usually it's not
close.
Rockies will go miles sometimes, and that's the hardest thing with Rockies, is just keeping up with them to get where they're going to bed sometimes. Whereas Roosevelt's, it seems like they've got a spot, and a lot of times he won't bugle, a lot until he gets to where he will on the run everyone, when they're moving and everything, but he likes to be, Roosevelt's like to be around their girls. They like to be close to them, and then they show dominance that way. And so that's in our experience, that's how we hunt them. We want them to bed down. We kill 95% of our bulls from 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the middle of the day, in the hottest part of the day, because those animals have went in there, they've bedded down. He knows his cows are safe. He knows, okay, they're going to stay there for the day. Now I got time to go check out this guy over here that's been bugling at me or cow calling or whatever it may be, that's been trying to piss me off. I'm going to go. I know they're fine. I'm going to go now and check this out. And that's when we capitalize on midday, almost, like I said, 90% of the time, it's right in the middle of the day.
Right on. So then, so they're bedded down. You've obviously had a couple bugles with them early to establish where they're at for bedding.
Correct.
Then you guys wait, and then do you do a slow play sneak attack and come in close and just try to piss them off? Is that the idea? Just get closer and closer?
It depends on his demeanor. Like if I can see the bull ahead of time, it helps too, because you can really watch with every call. And that's one thing I would really stress to people is like, watch these animals when you do something and watch their reaction. Like when you cow call, does he throw his head back and start sniffing the air and stuff like that? And that's like, I would stick with that cow call as hard as you can, and you're going to call that bull in 90% of the time. Or does he go over and rake a tree? When you bugle, when you rake, what does he do? Does he start peeing on himself? I know it sounds crazy, but all these tiny, tiny, tiny little things, if you can see his demeanor in everything that you do and then mimic that, what he really hates the most, you're going to probably call that bull in.
Right on. So then, like you were saying earlier, once they're committed, then they're committed, and you're probably going to kill them. So typically then first light, you guys are, if you haven't seen them, you're just locator bugling. I see a lot of times you guys do the road bugle with Rockies anyway. Do you do that with Roosevelt's too?
We do, yeah. Not as much on the roads and stuff, just because they do get down in these holes. And the thing that you probably experienced too, Rocky hunting is more open. It's got some more not quite as thick of timber and everything. So our bugle's going to reach a few hundred yards, whereas Roosevelt hunting, and if you've ever done it, take a bugle, walk in the thick timber, 150 yards. There's times you can't even hear yourself bugle or your buddy bugle. So I really recommend just every 200 yards bugle. And then we'll get these cat roads, and you guys have them too on the logging roads and stuff that are shut off to people or tank trapped out. Just walk those cat roads and we'll just fast walk it and bugle every 50, 75 yards. Like it's not uncommon for us to bugle 200 to 300 times a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you do see that in some of your shows, but a lot of times, it's for the, I guess in the effort of keeping the film rolling, we don't see what happens behind the scenes. And, the
Correct.
cat road shuffle that you guys do, I'm sure has a lot of bugles in it. So what's it like getting them to close in? Like when you're zeroing in on that bull and he's coming in, is there a change in tactics for that? But I call it the final approach. It's like goose hunting when the geese flatten out and they're coming in. So that bull is coming in that last 100 yards. Is there a strategy that's different than like, are you going to rake? Are you going to lip ball, grunt, or is it basically the same elk as an elk? I guess that's the question.
Well, by then, I hope the hope is by then, by that time, when you get into that moment, you need to hope you've got him figured out by then. You need to be like, I know now that when I rake, he's gonna come undone. Or when I chuckle, because bulls, they're so weird. Some of them, and I know you guys have seen this. Like, there's just one thing that you can do. If you keep on doing that one thing, it makes them mad enough. And it's for every single elk, it's different. And so I always, like, when we start a call sequence, I'll do one really long call and try to get really, really far range pitch. Nothing. Okay, let's do a bugle and a chuckle. Okay, let's try that. Let's try a lip ball. And all right. And I'll always usually start my calls with a cow call. Just like if I can get a bull to bugle back to a cow call, that's game over usually, if you can. It's pretty, not rare, but he's got to be, I think there's 2 to 3 days in his life per year that he's going to do that, and so that's what, and another thing is just, it's like, you don't know what happened last night. You don't know if that bull got his butt kicked last night. You have no idea of like what's taken place up until that moment when you're calling that elk. So really be feely with him and really try to feel him out. Like, is he kind of timid? Will he bugle but not come in? I mean, the classic elk move is 80 yards, right? And he just kept bugling and kept bugling. He was at 80 yards and he kept bugling. Okay, well, what are we doing there to increase our odds? Are we going to stop bugling and run up 50 yards after about 20 minutes after that bull's wandered off? Because he's got that safe place. He'll come again. He'll be back there. But is that what we do? Or do we start doing a different tactic? Do we leave him and try to just come back later on when his moods change? All these different things that you can do. It's just the whole bag of tricks, if you will, is just unlimited. But the biggest thing that I want everybody listening to this, the biggest thing is don't do nothing. Do something. Do something. Even if it's wrong, do not be scared to screw it up, because you're going to learn so much from that screw up that's going to help you down the road. But I hear a lot of elk hunters being like, well, I was afraid to screw it up, so I just didn't go. I just stayed back and I didn't. And he bugled his head off. It was awesome, 80 yards. I never got to see him, but I bet he bugled 30 times. And I'm like, what could you have done, even if you screwed it up, to maybe, increase your success rate on that? So that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you're the third guest in a row to tell us exactly that in 3 nights. And, one of the guys we were talking to last night, he's a BC boy and has, they've killed a ton of bulls. They're very successful success rate. And one of his comments, and this is regarding Rockies, he said, when you have that bull engaged in, a showdown, if you will, and you're within that 100, 200 yards and you're trying to get him to close the distance, don't let up, because if that bull loses interest for a second, his attitude could change and he could start to process what's going on and walk away. And it sounds like the Rosies might be just maybe not quite there in the same way or sense as a Rocky, but it makes good sense, right? Like, and I like your approach to just don't be afraid to try something, right? I mean, I know early on when I was learning how to elk hunt, the intimidation factor from a bull screaming at your face from 100 yards away. I mean, you're just shaking like a leaf. You're trying to figure it out, and then you don't want to move a muscle, but then reality, you can move, you can walk. The elk walk, they move. Just be slow and precise with your movements, right? And do you see any difference between? I guess it's hard with hunting Rosies because they're in such tight quarters and jungle. You probably don't, movement's not such an issue as it would be with Rockies, right?
Not so much. No, we're constantly, like, everywhere we go, we're breaking limbs. Elk are big, giant animals. They're big, and they don't usually tiptoe in. Usually, especially Roosevelts. Usually, you're gonna get teed off. Get teed off by a limb breaking. We've called in a lot of bulls just by hearing a limb pop, and they didn't bugle, they didn't do anything, but they gave themselves away as far as that goes. So no, we don't be quiet. We just act like a herd of elk, honestly. And your last question as well, like calling a scenario of like what to do. We have the advantage of having multiple callers a lot of times. So we have the advantage of hunting in a group of about anywhere from 3 to 5 people. And so it is a lot, but what that does for you is open up a lot of different avenues of, like, that bull's hung up, I can get that collar to wrap around, or I can move him around to where I can intercept that bull and get a shot at him. So it helps a lot. It really does.
So is that the same when you guys are hunting in other states and stuff? Do you do that same tactic with multiple guys and play the game?
Oh, there's been times I've packed 7 guys before one pack.
It blows my mind how do you get that? It's like a parade. How do you guys get a parade to walk through the bush with cameras and 6, 7 guys? It's pretty amazing that you guys can pull that off. So on the Rosie side of things, do you guys do the? I don't know if I've seen any. I mean, you're hunting from home most of the time, but I guess, do you guys ever do the the backpack hunts for Roosevelt? Like, have you got areas where you can do that, or is it pretty much road access? And
we do have some, and that's going to be your, like, closed down private timber companies that you can go in and maybe camp on overnight or find some BLM or whatever it may be. But for the most part, there's so many logging roads around here that if you walk far enough, you're going to hit another road. It may not be accessible or drivable, but you're going to have some access there. So usually what we'll do is make big loops. When we're Rocky hunting, our tactics for that is, we used to do, back in the day, we'd go for like 8 days, at a time. And what we found is now we pack for 3 days. So we'll pack 3 days of food, 3 days to stay. If we haven't killed one in 3 days, that's going to be our bad. Or if there's elk there, we're going to be moving, we're going to be packing an elk out, hopefully, is what the goal is. And then if we have, if we haven't seen or anything within 3 days, you're going to know what's there, and you better be moving areas anyway. Get out of it.
Sure. Awesome. Blake, we got a couple questions. Do you want to maybe pull them off the list there?
Yeah, I think the main question was, Adam was just asking, like, Trent, is there any, like, do your tactics change for Rosie's October versus September? Like, do you approach it any different?
It's different, man. So after that September moment, after you go through hunting September and getting in the main rut and all that, October's different. October can be tough. I always still carry cow calls, always still have a bugle. You never know when you're going to get that one, right? You never know when that's going to happen, but it's a tough deal as far as, I'm using them then because you get into the rifle mode then. And so I'm using that then to stop a bull. I'm rifle hunting and he's in a unit and he's walking out or he gets scared or something like that. That's when I'm using those for, is to actually get his attention enough to get a shot or something of that nature. I've had bulls bugle in October and we've called bulls in October. But I would not say it's the norm by any means. It's just not.
Yeah, so it's spot and stock basically once the rut's over, right? Getting lucky, finding them.
It is,
kind of
but a
working
lot
your
of
way
times those big bulls will stay with those cows, into November. They will, and big ones too. And so yeah, having that cow call in your mouth or something just to have that just buy you just a little bit of time, it helps sometimes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our limited entry draws are later on the island. I could be wrong. I'm sure someone will correct me, but just the ones I've looked at, there's a lot of October stuff. And I know it's at that point, you might get lucky calling them, but a lot of times it's spot and stock in the log blocks and whatnot. So let's switch gears a little, Trent, and talk about the out of state stuff and get over to the Rockies. I'm super curious about this one. You go back to your Land of the Free series, the first one where it was 53 days of elk hunting and however many states it was. And what'd you say? How many bulls did you guys kill in that month?
Killed 13.
I can't. That just staggers me. But yeah, I mean, I watched the whole series and I'm certainly going to go back and watch it. So let's talk about the strategy for that. So obviously you did not, you didn't just 1 year just decide, oh, we're going to hammer this out. You must have had some planning. How did the scouting and preparation go for, even the first 1 or 2 states? Like, were you e-scouting? You have buddies? Like, what's the drill there? How did that all play out?
Yeah, so that was a collaborative effort. So every single state that we went to, and that's how we did it to try to grow our brand and to try to grow the following that we were trying to do, is we met with another company. So like we went to Colorado and we met with Exo Mountain Packs and hunted with them. And so that was kind of cool that we told each company that we met with, we said, hey, here's the deal. You guys pick out where we go hunting. We'll help you do that. Send us, your ideas and stuff, and let's collaborate on that, and we'll finalize those. But if you guys got some ideas of where we're going to go in Idaho, anyway, let's talk about those and let's do that. So it was a collaborative effort in that way as well, to try to kick that off, because just doing that on your own, and this is another great thing. I'm hoping, anyway, all these I'm hoping are great things for somebody, but it's always have at least 2 to 3 spots picked out, 2 at the very minimum. I would say 5 at the maximum, because there's so many times that we will head to a place, and like I said, we'll search it out for a day, 2 days, and it's a ghost town. It just didn't work, and you jump in the truck, and there's a lot of times we will drive 24 hours, 12 hours all through the night to get to the next trailhead that we have on our list, to start hiking from there, to get in there and go hunting. So it always have a backup plan, so you don't, and big thing about elk hunting, and we've touched on this before, is discouragement, right? Always do something. Just do, even if you don't know if it's right. You can't just stick. I talked to so many people. They're like, man, I hunted the same spot for 20 days. And I saw 2 herds. And it's like, no. You need to be moving. You need to be like, if you're not seeing what you want to see, get mobile and get out of there and go find those elk. Go chase that dream.
Yeah, and the one thing I've noticed too, and I'm sure everybody who's listening has noticed it as well. I mean, you guys cover a boatload of ground, even if it's like you go to a trailhead. The nice thing about what you have in the U.S. is you've got all this protected wildlife, or I don't know what they call it, but basically it's like state land that you have.
National forest.
National forest. Sorry, that's what I'm looking for. So you got the national forest to work with, and you've got the trailheads. But I mean, you see a lot of your footage where you guys will roll into a trailhead and there's 5 horse trailers and 13 trucks, and and it's like, okay, guys, we're gonna go. But the cool part of it is, we see you guys bugling 10 minutes up the trail, and you might not hear something, but you might. And then the next day, wow, we're 15 miles deep. We're working this ridge. We got, we aren't seeing anything. And then, 2 days you guys are packing out or you're killing elk or whatever. So I'm just curious now, when you get to that micro level where you've teamed up with, like, say you got hooked up with Steve from EXO and you guys are hunting in Idaho, that's a case where he probably knows that territory pretty well or has buddies or experience, but there's got to be some of those locations where you might have an idea on a trailhead and you're just trying it. And that's what we see in your shows and your content is, a lot of times those mistakes are made and you capture that and record it. But how does e-scouting play a role for you guys at that level? Like when Steve says we're going here, are you guys studying it up real hard ahead of time, or what do you do?
A little bit. I mean, if you get out of state, honestly, and you get in some big roadless, and if it's roadless and it's got water and it's got timber in it, there's 90% time you're going to find elk in it, is what we've found. And at that point, sometimes it's just how deep you're going to go. How far do you want to go, and how far does the land allow you to go before you run into another road system or another who knows what. So it's like all those things play a factor in it. But like there was one time we were in Colorado hunting, and it was a spot that we killed some really good bulls the year before. And we went in there 8 miles, and it was a ghost town. We couldn't find a bull. We couldn't, on our way out, we did kill one bull. We did shoot one bull on the way out, and Trevor shot it and we packed it out. But while we were doing all that, there was a guy in that place that we ran into, because we ran into a lot of people in there. And he's like, man, I hunted this spot and in the southern spot of Colorado, and he named it and everything. And honestly, we packed Trevor's bull out. Everybody got in the truck. We drove clear south 12 hours all night long, got to that trailhead to his spot that he said that was a good one, because we didn't really have anything else to go on. We
that was your lead.
Yep. And in 2 days, we killed 3 bulls in there. So it was nice. One of those things where it's like, you gotta have that confidence, I think, to just up ante and go do something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, I'm guilty of this too, maybe selfishly, but if you talk to a lot of people in the hunting space, you're not going to get an X on a map, but you might get some pretty good advice on general areas. And like you say, if it's got water and it's got feed and it's remote, well, there you go. Those are 3 of the 5 or 6 things you need to kill elk, right? It's a little different in the sheep hunting world in BC. I'll tell you that right now. Like, guys, it's like, but whereabouts do you hunt? I hunt up north, right? Like that's, that's basically as far as it goes. But
yeah,
you're definitely you're definitely right on that. I guess, sorry, you were going to add something there, Trent?
No, one thing I'm just going to add about just like bouncing around and changing directions and changing, where you're going to go is so like I said, like we went to the whole other end of the state to do that. And we had the just off the whim, and it just goes back to the whole don't be afraid to screw up kind of thing. Like don't be afraid to make a decision and it be wrong, and that's where the team that we have put together is like we're all really, really, really tight, and we just we back each other no matter what. We flip a coin in the air, who's shooter today, and he makes every single call. I don't care if he wants to go to Winnemucca to go hunting tomorrow. We get in the truck and we all follow him, and then all right, your day's over. Now it's someone else's turn, but still,
you're fired.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like just hunting as a team has helped us a ton, man, a ton.
Well, that's awesome. One thing that I've noticed watching your stuff over the years, you guys are super aggressive with bugles.
Yeah,
and that seems to be your theme. We've had Blake and I chatted about this last night. Our first guest owns a call company, and he's an Alberta elk hunter, world champion elk caller, super knowledgeable guy. And he says elk hunters are broken into 2 categories for the most part. One is, and of course everybody does bugle and cow call, but he said for the most part, from a strategic perspective, you are either a bugler or you're a cow caller. And, again, guys will do both, but
sure.
you look at your show and the content and the strategy, we hear an awful lot of bugles and we see a lot, and it's aggressive, and it's a lot of them. And maybe talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure that's something you guys have enhanced over the years, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes to a fault, actually. There's times that it's just like, man, why did I do that? That was dumb. Why did I? Yeah, guys, I just want to really stress, like, you have no idea how many times we just let out one bugle or one cow call, and the whole herd just blows up and just takes off so many times. And it's just like, what did I say there that wasn't right? I have no idea.
That doesn't even make the B-roll, right?
Yeah, you know, you have to say it. You have to be like, oh man, that just happened. You know, I don't know, but it's yeah. But so our whole tactic, I'll describe it as fishing, right? So I'm going to go fishing, and I got my fishing hole, the hole that I'm going to fish in, right? I'm going to throw my line in there 4 or 5 times. If I don't get a bite, I'm going to run down the river to the next hole. I know there's probably 5 fish in there that are sitting down there. And I'm going to throw a couple different lures at them, and then I'm going to move on. And we do the same thing in hunting. We are looking for the biters. So we are going to cover as much ground as we can to find that bull that wants to play our game, rather than trying to, you know, maybe, okay, I heard a limb pop, let's try to stalk in or something like that. We just don't do that. We're looking for that one situation that puts the ball in our field in order to put the advantage on us. And so we're looking for the biters. We're trying to find the one that wants to play our game. And so bugling is the best way for us to do that, because it's a vocalization. You know, you've got a bull, for one, and I have nothing against cow hunting. I have nothing against it, but here it's 3-point or better. So you got to kill a bull. So
Sure.
For one, you've got a bull, and for two, you know, he's responsive. So there's 2 big W's right there. And then you go into, okay, can you move him around? Can you designate what he does? And we do that with a lot of different things, bugles, cow calls and stuff. But how we generally find that bull is from vocalization of a bugle.
Right. So I guess, you know, the difference, I guess, the main difference for us here in British Columbia and Alberta, to a certain degree, we don't have the density of elk. So we don't have those populations. So, you know, when we're fishing, and I'll kind of steal this from you a little bit, we're looking for nibbles, not as much, maybe a little bit more than bites, like full on salmon strike. You know, if we get a little tap of the line and that's one bugle calling back to us, that might be what we have to work with. So, you know, our strategy might be a little bit different there, in that we don't have, I don't want to call it a luxury, but we don't have the population, as simple as that. So,
but that's, you know, the whole
it's,
thing.
It's tougher.
You got to understand though, Chuck, I've went 7 days without hearing one bugle.
There you go.
So it's not like it's not a daily thing. It's not a weekly thing. Sometimes I've went 5, 6, all so many days without hearing one peep. And that's a lot of things. You can show it on there, but the viewer's like, okay, cool, you didn't hear anything today, you know?
Yeah, it's not great TV.
Exactly. And so we try to show, hey, guys, this is the 4th day that we've been at this grind. You know, we've done 20 some odd miles or whatever it may be. It's like, we're not getting a response. And so it's like, when you do get that one response, because we don't have a huge density either, our elk populations aren't huge, but it's just capitalizing on that one, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I guess, like you say, you're covering ground as much as possible, and you can only show so much of a 10-day elk hunt in, you know, 22 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. Right. So
Correct.
Cool. So, one of the things I've been doing with our guests this week is I've been throwing out scenarios and just kind of getting the opinion from everybody. So here's a scenario that's pretty common. And this more often than not is Rockies, because again, I haven't hunted Roosevelt yet. But so how do you guys handle a bull? So it's early morning. You get that initial bugle. It's maybe at the far end of reach as far as distance goes on the bugle. You hear that faint bugle. You get him talking a couple times, and it appears that he's moving away, and that's your one and only lead. What's your approach with that bull? He's headed to bed. He's got his cows. That's the lead, and your shooter of the day says, I want to kill that bull. So what's your strategy there?
you're pulling right off the bat. You're pulling out your maps, Onyx, whatever maps you use. We use Onyx. They're awesome. You're pulling out your maps and you're looking at a direction. And I'm going to try to keep that bull bugling as much as possible. And I'm going to start hauling butt to try to get to it. So like I said before, it's keeping up with those Rockies. That's the hardest part, because a lot of times they'll go long distance to bed and they'll turn around. You hear it all the time of, well, he was just walking away from me, but he was bugling, but he was just walking away from me. That's not because he hates you. That's because he's following his cows. His lead cow is telling him where they're going to bed. And he's just going to fall, he's going to be right behind them the whole way, smelling exactly what he can smell off of them as they walk. So I would be just tuck and tail and going straight at him, keeping the wind, keep up elevation enough to where the wind, because that wind's going to change here shortly, so that wind's going to be drawn down if it's morning, obviously, in a lot of places. I'd be keeping a little elevation and going right at him and trying to just cut that distance and keep up with him is what I would be doing.
Right. Yeah. So then just try to just keep them engaged and try to get as close as you can and try to figure out where they're going. And then if he goes quiet, but you know where he is that when you guys try to tend and pull out the slow play and wait, or let him get bedded down and then, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. The slow play is a huge thing for us. You'll see us sitting a lot of times. I'll sit for 3-4 hours sometimes in one spot that I know the wind is okay, that I know I'm close enough. I could hear him if he does anything. So there's so many times you're just sitting there and you guys have seen a bull bed down, a lot of times they'll grunt, make a big noise and that'll tip you off. Like, okay, he's right over there. Yes. And then it's just subtle stuff, just seeing what gets him agitated, seeing what sparks his interest and just kind of going from there and slow playing that. But yeah, just, you can screw things up in a hurry, but you can also sit there for hours and still screw it up. So it's like, where do you want to go with it? What's your best advantage and what's your best opportunity? How hot's it going to get that day? Are they going early? Are they going early to bed? Or are they just waiting until 10 o'clock sometimes to bed? All these little things can tip you off to where you make a final decision to go after that bull and to really, that's where you're going to make your stand.
Do you guys pay attention to the moon cycles?
No.
With the elk rut? Nope.
No.
Yeah.
If you can go hunting, my advice to you, if you can go hunting, go hunting.
Yeah. Personally, I'm not a believer, but I know a lot of guys, for some reason, have their own reasons why they follow the moon cycle. But it always seems when I look at the moon cycle, if I happen to look at it, it's never right for the 10 days I have to go elk hunting. So it's
right.
Well, I'm not going to wait another year, so I'm going to try. Right.
My biggest advice some days, I get it a lot. Question. 11th through the 22nd is not a bad time in September. If you got a 10-day period, not a bad time.
Does that apply with the Rosies on the West Coast, or is that right a different time?
Right now, it's crazy, actually. We've got 3 bulls that have bugled this last week. So I've got bulls right now that are actually running cows right now, which is nuts to me. I don't know what it is about the year. I don't know. But that was last week. That was 5-6 days ago. So it just nuts. Yeah. So I'm hoping it leads up for a good season. But I would say generally, like Rosie hunting, I want to hit those. I want to hit them from opening day. I want to hit them from the 1st of September. If I'm going to plan a Roosevelt trip and then plan Rocky trips, the Roosevelts will be first in our experiences.
Right on. So another scenario I have for you, and we kind of touched on this before, but it was, more along the lines of Rosie. So let's say you get in a situation, you're in Wyoming, you've been working a bull. You guys are archery hunters, so you want to get them ideally sub 50, right? That's sort of the idea if you can.
Yeah.
What do you do if you're in a situation with a bull and, he's holed up again, he's out of range, and he's engaging with you, starting to lose interest, and you start to get nervous. You can't get him within 50. I know you probably have different scenarios for different things, but what's your go-to move? What are you doing right now? Let's do it.
My go-to move is I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to obviously he's losing interest because you're not coming the distance. So he wants to see you just as much as you want to see him. But the problem is he's not budging. And so do the best thing you can and get closer. So I'm going to shut up. And that bull, obviously, he's probably got cows somewhere out ahead of him. And so he's got a safe place. It's usually on a ridge top. Usually 9 times out of 10, it's on this ridge or on the edge of a bench or something. So I will get up to the edge of that bench on level wise as far as elevation. And then what I'll do is just shut up and not say a word and let him wander off and lose interest. And then that's the only time I'm actually going to sneak up there. And I will probably still sit my collar close to where he was at, probably, just so it doesn't spook, so he feels comfortable. And so I'll get my shooter up to where he can make that 40-yard shot. And then I'll have my caller go ahead and call and see if he'll come right back to there, try to get him agitated enough to get back to that one spot he feels comfortable so you can get a shot at him.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's great advice. I know we talked about this last night with our buddy Jordan, who's a BC guy and hunts, like I said, has a lot of success with them. And Blake and I personally have noticed this too, that the rough country bulls, like where in your steep mountainous country and dark spruce and dark timber, when those bulls are coming in, they want to come in from above you. That's the common theme with our bulls in BC, unless it's flat country, they want to come in above you. Do you guys find that in states like Wyoming, Colorado, where there's, big mountains, or does it really matter to them?
I don't know necessarily above you. I know we get a lot of the whole come in to where it's almost visual and then circle. They'll do this. They'll try to circle you, whether it be above you, whether it be side hill, however that topography works. And this is why we have a lead shooter. So we'll run a lead shooter, and it's his call where he sets up. That's where your call is. And then the other guy's going to flank him. So we're going to have a secondary shooter, and he's going to flank him just for the chance that bull does try to circle you, and then he can still get a shot before the bull wins you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys don't really have opportunities for rifle hunting in the rut in most of those states either, right? So you've got to kind of have that 50-yard zones all covered by other shooters, right? That's correct. That's probably the tactic. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So for us, it's a little different here too, because our, a lot of times especially in that rugged country, our shooting lanes are very unpredictable, but it is rifle. So, most of the guys will tend to keep the shooter fairly close to the collar, just because of the angles and stuff. But
Roosevelt hunting, we'll do the same thing. There's a lot of times our collar's sitting right off our shooter hip a lot of times in Roosevelt hunting, whereas Rockies, we're pushing that 20, 30, 50 yards sometimes, whereas Roosevelt hunting, there's a lot of times we'll be right on the shooters, right behind them.
Yeah, right on. So what's your favorite way to hunt, like the backpack hunting, or do you like the nice cushy camp? I mean, you guys do both. Like, what's your favorite?
It's hard to beat ribeyes. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard to beat ribeyes.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. No. Yeah, Mountain House ribeye. Let me think, right?
No, the backpacking thing. It's the neat thing about the backpack thing is to me. This is another thing. Like in my life, I want to be able to get a map of the Western United States or Canada. I'd love to hunt up there one of these days, and be able to put a pin on places that I've hunted. And instead of a pins being in dots, I want a pin to be covering the whole state to just try new things. And so that's why every year we say, dude, let's not go back to the same place we've been. Let's go to a new spot and
new stuff. Yeah.
And you hunt so much harder, because if you're hunting the same spots all the time, you're like, okay, they were here last year. We went down here. We did this, you're going to hunt so much harder if you go to a new spot and you're like, okay, I'm not going to leave a stone unturned. I'm going to check this whole box is what I'm going to do. Thanks, buddy. And getting dark in here.
Yeah. I was like, boy, this is a long session.
No, it's just getting dark. But yeah, just like checking all the boxes and actually, just do your due diligence. And then when you get done with that area, you're like, okay, I feel like I hit that good enough and there's nothing here.
Yeah. I know. I like the backpack hunting
Do
for
ya?
certain things. Elk, yeah, Blake and I just got back from a backpack sheep hunt. We love that adventure stuff, but I'll be honest, I'm pulling my fifth wheel trailer north here in a couple weeks, and we're going to camp in town, and we're bringing our hunting buggy with us. We're going to day hunt, and we may spike out, but yeah, ribeyes, I'm with you, man. I think there's not a bad. The other one that we've discovered too is Starlink, the satellite internet, which
So
because
that was talked about this year. That was talked
I
about
bet
this
it
year.
was. Yeah, you guys could upload. You could upload, live day by day stuff in the backcountry. But you think about it, right? The conveniences for hunters now, technology's come such a long way, and it does suck a lot. I'm sort of old school too. It's like, well, I don't want to be connected, but at the end of the day, I can work remote. Blake can work remote, and if we're able to stay connected, we can have more days in the field because we can stay up there longer and not impact our jobs. Now, it doesn't help the wife relationship at home. In Blake's case, he's getting married in a week. In my case,
hey.
I know, hunting season, right?
I know.
We tell.
Our elk season opens for the most part like September 11th, so I was kind of plotting it on that, but
okay,
yeah.
I've had a lot of feedback on the September date. Yeah,
we could do a whole podcast on why that's not a good idea, but I'm just
you're speaking my language, Trent. Because when I first heard the date, I was like, "You want a what?"
Yeah, not my first pick.
Yeah, just
but
make
I did
sure
tell
that.
him.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I've been married. It'll be 37 years this September or November. I'm gonna get that right, November. And the one piece of advice I gave him was, I said, choose your battles.
Yeah.
That's it. If you want to hunt, fight for it. If she wants you home the weekend before hunting season starts, does it give you hunting season? If it does, go for it.
Establish that right now.
Exactly. So it's story time, Trent. You must have one of these, because we all do. Tell us your one that got away story. There's got to be an elk in there somewhere that just fries your bacon, man. Which one got away?
Man. Brock, congratulations, brother. That's awesome. There was one, if you watch our oldest videos, and this one you can't see on YouTube because we don't have the digital space. We didn't know how to put the clips together to actually get them on YouTube down. So you have to, it's a DVD we called Tagged Out. It was our very first season. And we hunted our butts off, like I said, for that whole year. And we killed those bulls on the last 4 days. We killed 4 bulls in 3 days, the last 3 days. But before that, we had this bull, and it was giant. I've never seen, it's one of the biggest Roosevelts I've ever seen. Probably, I would say in that 320 category. Just a big, giant, real heavy. And he would come out in this unit, and we'd never have a chance to hunt him. He'd never bugle. He would just come out, and there was another bull that was bugling, actually, that we could actually visibly see, and he would walk around that whole herd. It was amazing. And that bull would walk away, and he would smell the whole herd, and he would just walk off over the hill. And we nicknamed him Walter. And we tried and tried and tried. And I saw him 2 different times. I got visuals at him. I had him pretty close one time, and I was at full draw, and I never ever did get to release an arrow at him. But it was one of those that we always look back now and be like, how could we have, that was when we were first starting. That was when we were just, pretty darn new to doing the calling thing and to setting our own boundaries of what we needed to do there. And it was tough. It was like, what to have that time over again, right? I think we all say that all the time, like, man, if I could redo that, I would not have done that like that,
Mm-hmm. The legend of Walter.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It was cool.
All right, cool. That's, I mean, I've got a few of those. One of them is a stone sheep. That's a story for another day, but hopefully next year we can have a different conversation. So there's been a ton, like one of the things I've noticed or loved about your guys' your content is like the up close and personal, like your cameraman, and it's all of you. Like I've seen every one of you carry the camera on certain days, and you guys have had some like incredible elk encounters. In your mind, I know it's probably impossible to pick, but just maybe not the most craziest experience, but tell us a crazy experience that maybe, was on camera or maybe not on camera as far as an encounter goes with a bull elk.
We've had a couple crazy ones. We had a spike run over Ty one time. He shot it, and it came right at us, and it hit him, as it ran. I mean, right through us. There was another time that we're hunting with Wayne Endicott from the bow rack, and anyway, he shot a bull, and it was really crazy because we had a different camera angle on the bull, and it just plows its head into this giant rock, like just digging, how they have their head down, and it just stops the bull. Time blows off. We've had a lot of just crazy stuff. I guess the one that comes straight to mind is this last year. I had an elk tag here in Oregon, and anyway, the bull was face on to me, and that's another cool thing that we could get into at some point. But it was a frontal shot, and we've had very good luck, a lot of success with the frontal shot. Anyway, and it was 23 yards, not a long shot, and I was already at full draw. But the elk was kind of triggered, and I didn't know that. My brother was off to the side, and he was at draw on the bull and just about ready to shoot him. And I didn't see Trevor because it was a little bit thicker where he was at. And I released the arrow, and actually the bull ducked right when my bow goes off. And so you can see it frame by frame from the side angle. You can see my arrow coming in, and then he ducks his head, and I caught him right underneath.
Oh yes, I remember this episode. Yeah.
And if you want to talk about, like, we respect these animals more than anybody does. I mean, the last thing you want to do is see these animals suffer. And it was it just tore me apart, Thank God that we tracked him, and he went almost 2 miles, and then he expired, and just from that shot, he was bleeding the whole way. It was crazy.
I remember this one because the camera was running from Trevor's angle, right? And you could see it on camera. If I'm wrong, but that bull jumped from public to private land too, right? Wasn't he on? Didn't he die on private land?
It did. So we had to call the game warden. Then we had to get hold of the landowner, because it's the game warden can't say anything. He said, "This is the landowner's number." Super blessed because the landowner, he actually came in and he actually packed it out for us. He drove his truck right to it, and which was really cool of him. But it was a roller coaster. Elk hunting, any type of hunting, it's just the highs and lows of the roller coaster of the whole thing, and those are sometimes unfortunate, but at the same time they're the most memorable, I would say.
Well, yeah, and you know what? It kind of opens the door for an interesting discussion, which you guys really need to be commended for, and that's the fact that it's the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes out in your stuff. And let's be honest, we're all hunters. We've all had good, bad, and ugly, right? Like I lost a mule deer last year because I made a shitty shot on him. I never found him, and I've never been madder in my life. I've wore the leather off my boots tracking that thing, and I never did find him. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons that we started this platform was to provide a place for hunters to go on and have these discussions without getting flamed, without getting shadow banned, without having the antis come in with their mindless opinions. And, I could go on a total rant for an hour on this, but at the end of the day, what you guys are doing is the reality of hunting, right? Like there's been more than one occasion where we've seen an arrow hit a shoulder blade, with one of your crew. And, a lot of times you find them, but there's the odd time where you don't, and you just got to dust yourself off and get past it, right? I mean, that's the reality of hunting.
It is. There's definitely those times. And I always hate this. hate's a strong word. I always dislike it when people say, well, if you haven't lost one, you haven't been hunting long enough. That's
Yeah.
not, it shouldn't be said like that. But at the same time, it's those things like we show every single thing, because if Taylor Naren learns something from what our mistake was made, how we went wrong or something at that point, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it. If it helps somebody do something different or approach something differently, it's all worth it to us. But it goes at the possible consequence of, like you said, getting canceled, like YouTube shutting you down, whatever it may be. You always are, you're riding that fine line,
Well, I could tell you, if you guys ever run into issues, your content's welcome on Spike Camp. I'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate that.
Let's talk a little bit. We're getting close to the end of the session here, and I just want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to talk about the Born and Raised product line that you have. Now, personally, I purchased your game bags last year. I have yet to try them, but they're awesome, man. Just looking at the design and watching the build, maybe give us a little history on that whole process and
Sure.
business model, because it's pretty interesting.
It's been crazy. So we went from a YouTube creation, social media, whatever you want to call it, content creators, to now we're into manufacturing, which is a whole different ball game that comes with its challenges and stuff like that. And so we designed these. We wanted to make a better game bag than just a pillowcase, and we wanted to make it for the solo hunter. We wanted to make just something, something better, right? Build that better mousetrap. And so we came up with it's shaped almost like a ham, is what it's shaped like. And so a front shoulder is shaped like a ham, and as well. So it's like, and it's got a zipper on it. So you can just undo the whole thing. If you're solo, you can put it right underneath the animal as you're taking the quarter off, and it just lays right in there. Biggest thing I think with hunters is you're going for the experience, but you're also going for meat, right? You're going for that most important thing, to feed your family for a year for an elk hunter, so it's pretty important stuff, and you need to take it seriously. And so, as far as the game bags, they work really, really good. We have a full set that does a whole elk, and just like caribou hunting the other day, we just took 2 quarter bags, and you could put the whole caribou in 2 quarter bags as well, so it's multi-use. They're just game bags at the end of the day, but they're super easy to use.
Yeah, we're super excited. We've been trying to kill an elk. Blake's been trying to kill an elk now for like 6 years, and he's had the 6-point curse. Like every bull that we've called in is 5 or less. So we're changing areas. We're going to go up where the little better chance, 3-point or better. And those game bags are going to be used, man. We're going to get him bloody this year. That's the plan. He's earned it. So,
absolutely.
And what about the calls? Like, I know it's both elk and waterfowl now.
Yeah. So we teamed up. Cody actually he's waterfowl hunted all his life, and then we teamed up also with a guy named Eric Strand, who's champion waterfowl caller and big in the industry. And so we make all sorts of duck, goose, all sorts of cackler. I don't know a ton about that side of the thing, but everybody says that we make the best calls in the market.
Nice.
So yeah.
So are you manufacturing? Are you manufacturing in Roseburg then, or in the States, or like how?
So we have all our barrels and stuff like that turned in Washington. Is where we have all our barrels for our duck, goose, and all that line done. And then, like my dad, he makes all of our elk reeds. So he actually does those. That's what Dad does. It's like he makes elk reeds for hours and hours and hours. And so, but quality control's main thing in that, and he does a great job. And so that's really cool to kind of keep that in house as well. So a lot of the stuff we do right here, right here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, that's very cool. So we're winding down. A couple of questions for you, two questions, and then we're going to cut you loose. I know you want to get some sleep.
You're fine.
What advice can you give new elk hunters? One piece of Trent wisdom. What would you give them?
I don't know if I'm the smartest guy to do all this, but my biggest thing for elk hunting and what is the average, like 7 years or something? Elk hunters usually go 7 years in between shooting elk of something that nature, and
Mhm.
honestly, if you stick with it and you stay at it, you can shorten that gap by a lot. So just sticking with it and learning the animals. Just go out there anytime you can be in the elk woods, and learn those behaviors and learn that. And then on top of that, it's the big cherry is just keep a positive mindset. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's been so many hunts that I've been on. I haven't seen an animal in 5 days. I haven't heard a bugle in 2 weeks. I haven't, whatever it may be. And in 5 minutes from that period of thinking that, you have a beautiful bull on the ground dead. So it just, you have to stay positive, have to keep that mind always going. It's just takes one more. So
Yeah, that's the tagline, your tagline from, I don't know if it was from one of the Land of the Freeze or what, but it only takes one.
It only
And
takes one. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
written on most of our calls. It's written on written on our packs. It only does take one, man.
That's awesome. All right, last question for you. Same thing, only what advice can you offer entrepreneurs that want to take their idea to the next level? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you guys did this, right? You were all, I mean,
Yeah.
all young families. You put all your chips in and quit your jobs. Like, talk about that for a second.
We talked about risk a little bit earlier, and that definitely plays into this whole thing. But I think even more important than risk is sticking with it, staying the course. You hear that a lot. It's like stay the course. It's going and taking an idea and fleshing that idea out and getting it down to the bone and being like, okay, this is what we need to do, and then doing it. And it's capitalizing on that. With social media right now, I have the privilege to mentor a couple different social media groups right now and be able to, jump on calls with them and talk with them. And a lot of it is, Trent, why is it not working? Why is it not being faster? I said, well, how much did you grow this week? Well, we grew such and such. That's a win. That's a W, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. Anybody that says, well, you can have that viral content or something of that nature, but is that the channel that you want? Is that the road that you want to go down? Or do you want to build this organic content and this tribe of people that trust you and trust everything you're doing? So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just stick with it. And you may not see it now, but you may see it 3 years from now. It's literally could be that long before you start to see exponential growth, and then there's times that it'll really ramp up from there once you get the ball rolling. But it takes time. Like, we had to build a library of 100 movies, 100, and the hours that it took in order to do and shoot all those things. I mean, our library was super deep before we even caught on. So I mean, it takes time and dedication, and if that's something that you want to do, that's what the thing. The invention of this internet thing is, there's bad to it too, but at the same time, is anybody can do whatever they want. You could be could be a professional sewer or knitter. You could be anything you want to be right now from the confines of your own home, honestly. So it makes it pretty dang awesome.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that statement and advice, it really has a profound impact on what Blake and I are trying to do here. Like, selfishly, yeah, it's father and son starting up taking an idea from, ground zero and building it. And we started in April, and we've had steady growth. It hasn't been like off the charts as far as numbers, but we're engaging a community. We're trying to gain and build trust with our members. We're trying to give them what they ask for, and there's challenges. You touched on it, right? Like, maybe it's not super fast in some months, but we did start this in the spring, and we're pushing it through the summer. And Brandon just popped up right there. He just made the statement, which is something that I've preached all the way through, and I've been on a few podcasts. It's quality over quantity. And, we're starting to get some traction, and, being able to pick up the phone or send an email to someone like yourself, who's like, just, like we really idolize what you guys have done down there. And I can't thank you enough for the support tonight and coming on here with our members. And just profound
Absolutely.
stuff, Trent. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm willing to help. I want to see everybody succeed, man. That's my goal.
Well, that's the one thing another thing that we've said too, is like, we're all trying to head the same direction to get to the same place, right? Like, the hunting conservation space is so undermanned when it comes to what we're competing for in this, in the world, is really, just a positive outlook on hunting and conservation, and try to show the meaning of why we do this. And the anti-hunters are armed and dangerous. They've got so much money behind them. They want to put us all out of business. So anyway, that's a whole nother podcast, Trent. Maybe we'll get you back on for another one here soon. But anyway,
Perfect.
brother, thank you so much. Keep your phone on in hunting season, because I'm going to text you a picture of this young married man with his dead bull.
Yes, you will. I expect that. Definitely. And thank you guys so much for this opportunity, guys. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, like the other thing, it's tide raises all ships. You know what I mean? So
You got it.
Totally.
let's all work together. Let's all work together at this.
All right. Safe hunting, everybody. Let's see the pics. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, Trent.
Thanks,
Thank
Trent.
you guys.
See you,
All right,
man.
good night, guys.
Right on, buddy.